Are you ready for a rail fanning adventure? If you are, then welcome to a Rusty Rails Rail Fanning Adventure. On March 5th, 2026, we made a trip to the Johnson City Railroad Experience, along with the Tweetsie Trail. We start off with the Johnson City Railroad Experience.
Welcome to the Johnson City Railroad Experience. This will be your opportunity to learn the history and technology of railroading in the Johnson City, Tennessee area. Formerly known as the George L. Carter Railroad Museum, we're going to bring you the new experience here today. All aboard! After its initial invention in Europe, the idea of machine-powered railroads began to rapidly take hold in the young United States. One such undertaking would be the Baltimore and Ohio, begun in 1828. The idea of not relying on canals or horses for basic transport was a big change. Other states quickly joined in this railroad revolution to compete for commerce while innovating fresh engineering marvels at the same time. Soon after this, America's Civil War would be fought, with the railroads becoming both a primary resource and a primary target for both sides. It was a bloody but needed fight that ended slavery and preserved the Union. Once these hostilities ended, the nation healed as the new Transcontinental Railroad linked East and West in 1869. However, safety soon became paramount, with signaling and scheduling becoming more complex. The railroads established the time zones that we use today. Speeds increased, moving past the 1 mile a minute barrier, 60 miles per hour. Johnson City became part of America's railroad story in 1853, when merchant farmer Henry Johnson built a locomotive water tank on his remote property on Buffalo Creek. A new town began to grow around this water stop for the new East Tennessee and Virginia Railroad between Bristol and Knoxville. It would be named Johnson City. By the mid-1890s, plans to consolidate regional firms into larger railroad systems had resulted in the ET&V becoming part of the Southern Railway. The Southern offered services from Washington, D.C., Louisville, and St. Louis throughout the South, with fast passenger trains and reliable freight service. Johnson City has been on this rail corridor since the 1850s, now part of Norfolk Southern. To reach a large magnetic ore deposit in Cranberry, North Carolina, a railroad line was proposed between there and Johnson City, and it would eventually be built in narrow gauge. Formerly known as the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, it became known as the Tweetsie in this region, and Johnson City would be its headquarters for its offices and its workshops. When finished in the 1880s, the ET and WNC interchanged materials in Johnson City with the existing Southern Railway. However, transloading goods between the two track widths was a time-intensive effort, a factor that soon limited narrow gauge popularity and eventually led to its demise except in isolated areas. The Tweetsie narrow gauge beyond Elizabethton was abandoned in 1950. Finally, in the 19th century, there was one other regional railroad project. This was called the Charleston, Cincinnati, Chicago, but it became financially insolvent before completion. It was known as the 3 Cs for short. One small section of the 3 Cs project did go into operation near Johnson City for a time before closing for good. The 3 Cs' hoped for but failed effort would require a visionary planner to revive it. Successful industrialist George L. Carter was instrumental in developing the natural resources of our area. He was a Virginia native, but eventually lived in a mansion in Johnson City. As a philanthropist, he donated the land for ETSU in Johnson City. But as a rail builder, he revived the old Three Seas operation between the Southeast and the Midwest, calling his new railroad the Carolina Clinchfield in Ohio. His plan would result in the final all-new railroad corridor built in North America, with soaring bridges and twisting curves to get across the mountains. With its shops located in Irwin, the Clinchfield route served Carter's coal mining interests, as well as becoming a major carrier of perishables like fresh produce from other southern states. It eventually became part of the family lines, later known as CSX, and its main line once existed where State of Franklin Road is now. Johnson City's railroad saw a major transition in the 20th century, as did all of America. The old gave way to the new, especially in terms of transportation technology, as automobiles and trucks became commonplace. Today, CSX continues to use the former Clinchfield corridor as part of its integrated transportation network. Steam locomotives played a major role in Johnson City to the very end. The shortened ET and WNC was already to standard gauge to Elizabethton, and two ex-Southern engines, 207 and 208, would run on that remainder until 1967. Today, 207 is back in its configuration as Southern 630 and operated by the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum. It occasionally sees mainline service. In 1983, the old ET and WNC Railroad became the East Tennessee Railway. As part of the Rail Link conglomerate, it still services local industry and acts as an interchange between CSX and Norfolk Southern. It even uses part of the former Clinchfield main line to do this, while its own former rail corridor became the Tweetsie Trail in 2014. The railroad that started all as the AT&V became a strong part of today's Norfolk Southern system. Hosting not one but three railroad systems, Johnson City is a railroad experience in itself. Now you know how we got here. Let's take a quick look at what you'll see in our facility here today. When you enter the museum, you'll either be able to follow a guide or self-tour the multiple galleries. For many, the highlight here is the world's largest scale model of the former East Tennessee and Western North Carolina narrow gauge. With accurate scenery based in the 1925 era, it has been 10 years in the making and is internationally known. The experience also plays host to other exhibits related to regional and national railroad. Many hands-on exhibits, such as the Little Engineer's Room and authentic rare artifacts on display. With a 3,000 volume library, scheduled special events, an annual train show every year, and ongoing updates to the exhibits, your experience can be new every time you visit. So we welcome you to come in and see it for yourself. We hope you enjoy your visit. As you exit our theater, we say once again, all aboard for the Johnson City Railroad Experience.
The layout that we are taking a look at is the ET and WNC layout, from Cranberry, North Carolina, where we're at right now, all the way to Johnson City, Tennessee. If you've liked what you've seen so far, please give the video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell to be notified about future uploads. Also, join our Discord. Link is down in the description down below, and channel memberships are now active. You can join by the join button or the link in the description down below. Some of the perks of becoming a member are early access to new videos, member shoutouts, priority reply to comments, and photo and status updates. And we hope to see you along with the Rusty Rails crew really soon. Also, we have merch now available through Spreadshop. You can visit the store by clicking the link in the description or buy any of the items below this video. the layout ends after this bridge. There is still more of the layout, but it is incomplete at the moment. They're still working on the Elizabethton and Johnson City portion of the layout. On display, they have the whistle of ET&W&C locomotive number 10. The next few photos are some tickets of the ET&W&C Railroad. The next photo is actually a ticket stand that they have on display, with tickets still in the display. Next up is an ET&W&C timetable. We decided to head on over to another layout and caught this CSX train crossing over a high bridge. If you're interested on the Johnson City Railroad Experience, you can visit them with a QR code to their website on the screen right now, or visit them at 207 North Boone Street, Suite 2000, Johnson City, Tennessee. Their hours of operation are Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Their general admission is $10, children 5 to 12 $8, and children under 5 are free. They do have memberships, and you can check those out on the museum website. Now let's head on out to the outside world and see 2 historic train stations that are still around Johnson City. But first, here's a map of the 3 railroads that actually intersected at Johnson City. The 3 railroads were the Southern Railroad, the Carolina, Clinchfield, and Ohio Railroad, and the ET&W&C. This map that was shown earlier is based on one originally drawn in 1915 that shows how 3 railroads crossing in Johnson City have contributed to its growth. The Southern Railway, completed as the East Tennessee and Virginia Railroad in 1858, opened traffic to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and New England states in the east, and to Atlanta, Birmingham, and New Orleans, and Memphis in the south. In 1915, Johnson City had 18 passenger trains arriving and departing daily. From 1883 to 1950, the ET&WNC, or the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad, carried passengers and freight across the mountains into North Carolina and on to the East Coast. The Carolina, Clinchfield, and Ohio, later the Clinchfield Railroad, accomplished what the Three Seas Railroad planned to do: provide transportation from the Great Lakes to the Ohio River, across the mountains, and to the Atlantic Ocean at Charleston, South Carolina. Here's the first train station. It is the original ET&WNC train station. It is now the Yeehaw Brewing Company. And the other train station, which is right across the street from it, is the Carolina, Clinchfield, and Ohio train station. If you've liked what you've seen so far, please give the video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell to be notified about future uploads. Also, join our Discord. Link is down in the description down below. And channel memberships are now active. You can join by the join button or the link in the description down below. Some of the perks of becoming a member are early access to new videos, member shoutouts, try to reply to comments, and photo and status updates. And we hope to see you along with the Rusty Rails crew really soon. Also, we have merchandise now available through Spreadshop. Now let's head on over to the Tweetsie Trail. Now before we go on to the Tweetsie Trail, here's the story of Tweetsie. In 1875, R.U. Padre formed the Cranberry Iron and Coal Company to bring iron ore 34 miles from Cranberry, North Carolina to Johnson City, Tennessee for smelting. A 3-foot gauge line was completed to Hampton by 1881, and to Cranberry in 1882. The first locomotives were named Watauga, Cranberry, and Utica. A train to and from Cranberry ran twice a day. It was called the Stemwinder, a reference to a popular pocket watch of the era. It hauled iron ore to Johnson City and provided passenger, freight, and mail service. It was called the Train with the Heart because of the service it gave the mountain people who lived along the line. Its famous conductor, Cy Crumley, even used a heart-shaped ticket punch. The train would stop while crews escorted children to their homes or stopped to take orders and deliver goods. Everything from thread to stoves and even coffins. The railroad had its best times from the 1890s to World War I and was referred to as the narrow gauge, or the ET by folks on the Tennessee side of the line. It was extended to Boone and Linville, North Carolina by 1918. And trains hauled iron ore and lumber. The trains opened up the area to tourism, taking folks up to Round Mountain to stay at the famous Cloudland Hotel. The ET and W&C began to decline in the 1920s when the iron ore and old-growth timber became depleted. The Cranberry Mine and the Johnson City Cranberry Furnace closed in 1929. The ET and W&C continued hauling passengers, freight, and mail, but construction of a road between Johnson City, Tennessee and Roan Mountain in 1931 caused further decline. To boost passenger traffic, excursion trains were run into the Doe River Gorge in the 1930s, and children were taken to summer camps at Linville Gorge and Blowing Rock. It was at this time the train became known as the Tweetsie, for the sound of its shrill whistle echoing off the mountains. The affectionate term was applied to the individual trains and to the Johnson City to Boone line as well. In 1940, a massive flood washed out much of the Linville line, and it was abandoned. The Johnson City to Boone line saw a minor revival when it provided passenger service for the workers at the North American Rayon Corporation Bamberg plant in Elizabethton during World War II. After the war, the ET and W&C continued to decline, and the last passenger train ran on September 24th, 1950.
So this is what we do.
And a piece of old rail.
some of the old pies.
Thanks for watching. I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, please give the video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell to be notified about future uploads. Also, join our Discord. Link is down in the description down below, and channel memberships are now active. You can join by the join button or the link in the description down below. And we hope to see you along the rusty rails really soon.